Welcome to the Basic Bee podcast, a show for the wannabe SEO savvy service providers among us, for the coaches and consultants who dream of becoming known for their storytelling skills, not to mention the solopreneurs who straight up need to master all things social proof to increase sales. After a little reluctantly fully committing to this online world of business, I quickly realized I needed to get people to come to me. I needed to tell them I was here and how I could support them. I dove headfirst into social proof, which led me to SEO, which led me to storytelling. And now it gives me great joy to share what I've learned with other business owners so they skip the hard stuff and ease straight into sales. This podcast gives you expert insights, actionable takeaways, and casual convos with some of the online world's best and brightest experts and strategists. I think that's enough of an intro, so here we go. Welcome back to the Basic Bee podcast. I am stoked to have you here, and I'm back with another guest and a dear friend. We have so much stuff to talk about today. We're going to be diving into all things pre-launch. I'm here with my friend Brenna McGowan, and we're just going to dive into this. So let me give you a quick intro of Brenna, and then we're going to get into all the questions. So Brenna McGowan is a launch strategist, copywriter, and creator of anticipation marketing. She helps coaches, course creators, and high-end service providers increase launch revenue, call in perfect fit clients, and reduce launch burnout with a strategic pre-launch plan. Brenna also happens to have been my very first Done For You case study client. She's even come back for more, which is like super flattering, of course. And I've gone through her PPP program. So both of these topics, PPP, pre-launch, case studies, are all going to come up today. So I want you to have that backstory. But Brenna, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you. All right. I'm going to hit you with the big question that I ask all my guests, and then we'll get into the rest of the stuff that's actually pertaining to the topic. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Which do you believe is most important for sales? SEO, storytelling, or social proof?
I know. I was like, this is such a trick question because they're all so important, right? So I put a little thought into this, and I'm going to say storytelling. And that is because storytelling, there's actual studies. I should have looked them up, but I didn't. Where like storytelling, it gets into our subconscious, right? It's how things stay with us. They seep into our being, if you will. So I'm going to say that storytelling is the most important. And whether you're telling good stories, and you can, of course, bring in case studies as part of a story. So that's the other reason why, because I was like, social proof or storytelling, right? But I do think it's storytelling. When you can tell a good story, you can also tell a really great case study, testimonial story. And even with your SEO, like your SEO is only going to be as good as if people coming and actually reading your content. So I'm going to say storytelling.
I love it. And you know what's, you're going to laugh. The thing that's coming to mind is when you had, was it a mouse in your drain and you talked about it in your email?
Exactly. And you remember that story, right? So I stay top of mind without even trying to, because now the story, so I think now we have to tell people the story, right? Like,
yeah, no, now you need to. Yeah. Tell us about the mouse.
So I actually use this story inside an event called Behind the Launch, and it's one of my reminder emails. And the thought process behind the story was people are very busy and things come up unexpected. And I want them to upgrade to a $27 ticket so they can listen to all of the interviews. So what happened on this particular Sunday is I went into my bathroom. It was a regular old Sunday. I walked into my bathroom and I turned my shower on, right? And I had the kind where it's like a big knob, if you will, and you turn it over. So I turned the shower on and I forgot to do something. And I was like, oh shoot, I need to do that before I take a shower. So then I start putting the lever back the other way to stop the water flow. And as I do this, I look down and I'm not joking, a wet mouse crawls from the drain out, from the bottom drain and comes out and into my bathtub. And I just scream so loud. Thank God my husband is a firefighter. So he's gone 48, 72 hours at a time. Like, thank God it just happened to be a Sunday that he was home when this mouse came through the drain. And can you imagine? Like, I was like, what happens if I didn't forget to do something? I would have turned the water on, like, right? And jumped my naked body into the shower and would have had a mouse crawl. I can't even like fathom what it would have been like. But yeah, this is why storytelling is so important. And this is why I love what we do as business owners, especially in the online world, is where, you know, this like random story of how a mouse crawled through my drain becomes a, you know, a sales mechanism, if you will.
Yeah, it really does. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And PS, like subtle, not so subtle plug for your email list. If you are not on Brenna's email list, she writes some of the most entertaining and impactful emails I've ever read. So please go get on her email list. And of course, we'll have the link and everything in the show notes and we'll talk about it later. But let's get into pre-launch because I definitely don't want to miss out on the main topic. So can you let's start with the basics. What exactly is a pre-launch?
Right. So a pre-launch it's simply a time period before your actual sales promotion. So I help a lot of course creators and online businesses sell their programs. So this would be the 4 to 8 weeks, depending on what the strategy is, before people can officially come to buy. But you can use a pre-launch in so many different aspects, right? Like you can pre-launch an event that you have coming. You can pre-launch your website is about to get released. Like there's so many other ways that pre-launch can be used. So essentially at the core of it, it's just the time period right before the thing actually happens.
Yeah, and you have painted this picture before where you were talking about a new movie will be coming out. And we hear about it eons before the movie is actually out. Do you want to speak to that a little bit more? Because I know the way you describe it is just like really perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So pre-launch is used in the entertainment and retail industry all of the time. It's funny enough, I actually had someone send me a picture this morning. I have a friend who's traveling to a different country, and she noticed that there was this display for Mother's Day, and she thought it was for Mother's Day, like America's in May. For them, it was in March. But what it is like, it's that time period where you think about, I always say like Costco is a great example. When you go into Costco in September, there's Christmas trees up there. Well, that's because they're not really expecting you to necessarily go buy a Christmas tree at that point. It's because they are teasing what is to come. The entertainment industry is a great example too. You don't find out a new record is coming out. Look at Taylor Swift. She's my favorite example, and not even because I'm a Swiftie or anything. It's just because she's talking about right now how she's recording a new album. You're not finding out about that new album the day it's released. She's teasing this all the way and building up anticipation. Same thing with a movie that's coming out. The trailers start 120 days before a movie actually comes. And so there's a reason for that. There's a reason why the entertainment and retail industry is doing this. And it's because they're seeding in, they're trying to get the little room in your brain that we have left for what are we going to buy? What's coming up? And when we can do this with our online courses, our programs, our services, we have a true advantage over our competitors.
For sure. I love that you point that out. And yeah, Taylor Swift does a good job. I think Beyonce like ended up doing that with her current album that's out, right? Where she was like teasing it forever in advance. She's another one that just like teases stuff in advance, which is great. So teasing and anticipation. I know you talk about anticipation marketing. Really what I want to know is, have you seen people do anticipation marketing wrong? And can you tell us a little bit more about what that is in your world?
I would say no and yes. Like what I would consider this anticipation marketing period or pre-launch period. The biggest mistakes I see is that people ignore their audience. They're so focused on the event that they forget to do the anticipation, the preceding, the teasing, the belief shifting, all the things that happen in a pre-launch. They just kind of throw that by the wayside because they're so focused on whatever that thing is that they're selling. So that is where I see things go wrong. The other thing that I see wrong is that people are putting out random content. So sometimes people will be like, oh, that seems like more work, right? Like we're not selling during pre-launch. It's a way of being very, very intentional about the content that people are seeing before they get a whole bunch of promotional emails or start seeing a promotion. The thing about it is that hopefully you're not one of those people that's ignoring your audience. You're putting content out there. But a lot of times we're just putting out random content. We're just throwing stuff out there and not really thinking about what do I need to say and do before my promotion that gets people interested, that gets people leaning in, that gets people excited, and gets people in the mindset that they want to buy from us.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. And having gone through PPP, it's not 6 weeks of selling, like you said. So I don't want anyone to miss that. It is very much like you're still just putting out content, but it's strategic content because you're building up to, oh, hey, here's this program that I have. And by the way, like over the last 6 weeks, we've been talking about this stuff and now your beliefs have been shifted and you've kind of moved through the journey without even realizing it, but not in a sneaky way, just like in a very strategic way.
Exactly. And that's it. And for anyone who's not familiar, PPP stands for the Pre-Launch Plan Program,
Yeah.
which is my group coaching program where I show you the proven systemized process that I show people exactly what to do everything that we've just been talking about.
Yeah. So you've not only created these pre-launches for your clients, but you then have this program where you walk people through the exact steps. And I guess I'll tee this up a little bit because when I had this idea to do the done for you case study copywriting, I was like, you and I were talking a lot. I knew a lot about like the pre-launch plan that you had done, the training that you were talking about. And I was like, Brenna would be perfect for this. So I reached out to you and I ended up writing case studies about pre-launches. This is going to get so meta this part of the episode. But I got to see what was going on with your clients, with your students, and I could see the magic of pre-launches actually working. Fast forward a little bit and I have my training program and I was like, my launches are just a cluster over here. I need to be much more strategic, much more thoughtful. Brenna's got this pre-launch plan program. Why don't I get in here and learn what it's all about? Because I know that it already works. So I wrote the case studies. I've gone through the PPP program and it's just really cool to see how you've taken what you did for clients. I don't know if you still do that for clients, but how you've taken what you did for clients and translated that into a program where you very seamlessly walk the rest of us through. Here's how you do this for yourself. It feels very approachable and it feels very methodical and very easy to do.
Yeah. And that's the biggest compliment that I get. I was just doing a case study interview with someone who went through the program the last time. And that was something that really struck me. It was just like, okay, this is simple and organized and doable. And shout out to Nissa Brown, who is my curriculum specialist, who actually helped me take what I did for clients and put it into really, really good curriculum that can be consumed. And so I can't talk about the program and in that respect and not mention her because it made a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you gave her a shout out. I'll try to make sure I grab a link for you too so we can introduce people to her. But that's a good segue because you're talking about doing case study interview. In the program, you definitely get us to start with VOC, voice of customer, market research. It's just where you're going and talking with your clients or students. For anyone listening, if you haven't heard of these terms before. And I remember you and I got on a call. I went through and I interviewed a crap ton of people. Doing like market research is one of my favorite things to do because I want to know what's going well. What could I be doing better? What's really resonating? How do I get more people like you in my world? So I want to know, how often do you think people should be gathering the voice of customer language or doing market research? Do you have like a range of how often people should be doing that?
Well, I think it depends. My first answer is constantly. I don't think we realize how much opportunity we have to do market research. And so it doesn't have to be overly formal. For example, I was speaking to someone on Voxer the other day and we were talking back and forth about the program. And I was just like, hey, I feel like you'd be a really great fit for this. And I'm not telling you this because if you don't want to join the program, it's totally fine. But can I ask you, what has stopped you from joining the program if it interests you, right? And going back and asking just really specific questions. Anytime that you are putting content out there, people are commenting, engaging, sending DMs. Sometimes it's just going like, can I ask you a quick follow-up question on this, on something you said? Because I'm curious to hear what you think. So I think there's an opportunity to be doing market research all the time. Like I have a Facebook group and anytime someone comes into my group, I ask specific questions. So I have thousands of answers at this point, or I think I do. I have to go back and look at the spreadsheet, well over 1,000, where I am asking specific questions around launching and what's holding people back. What do they want from a launch? But I'm going to say if you have not, especially in the environment that we are in, I'm going to say every 6 months, like if you have not done full-blown research market in a year, absolutely, it needs to be done. Interestingly enough, for Behind the Launch, which I mentioned was my interview series that I do, I was talking to guest experts, and I did these live interviews as well in my Facebook group. And this was a recurring topic that came up, which is how important doing market research is to the success of your promotions. And that sometimes we think, oh, it hasn't been that long. But Sophia Parr, I'm almost positive, was the person who talked about this, was she talked about how we evolve as humans, but we forget that our audience can evolve, right? And so I think that it's just a matter of not making it overwhelming, taking an opportunity to ask people questions. So if you have done a promotion and people haven't bought, sending out surveys is a great way. Sending out a survey to your list. I just sent out a survey, the pre-launch survey that I recommend, where I'm trying to get into the minds of people who may be interested in the program, things that they need to know or have to be in the program for them to be interested. Like there's so many different opportunities for it. So I'm going to say it's somewhere in between 6 months, a year, and constantly for your market research.
I totally agree with you because I'm always thinking, I'm even going back into like when I was just a massage therapist and I only had the massage practice because I was always asking questions or at least just like had my listening ears turned on. Because if you're listening, people are always giving you stuff that you can use in your marketing and your messaging to better understand where they're at, where they want to go, what's working well, what you can improve on. So I definitely agree with you. I wish there was something like ABC where it's like always be listening, always be, but anyway, it's not there. So do you feel like people need to be doing another round of market research like with each launch and or pre-launch that they're doing?
I think it depends on how much you're launching. Like I said, I go back to a year. If you have the capacity to get on calls, I think if you're doing it a little bit more all of the time, it doesn't have to be, quite every 6 months, but there is something about really being intentional. And I think that's really what everything that I talk about, whether it's pre-launch and strategy, it's like the intentionality is a little bit different when you are, taking the time to either have a back and forth Voxer chat or asking people specifically as you kind of get in the mind frame of your next launch. And it will help you. And the cool thing I love about the program is that, with all of the assets that you get in the program, the resources, therefore it changes the way how you think about it. You know what questions to ask. So it will allow you, when you have a system, if you will, of how to do market research, you can do it in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, but can be very, very intentional.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you do pack a lot into the pre-launch plan program. You pack a ton in there and it's really helpful. And every time I look in there, there's something else that I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was here. Oh, this tool's over here. It's really very well done, very well thought out, of course. Like I'm not shocked it's you, but I am curious. You talk about case studies inside the training, and I know you have your own case studies, but like, what have you seen case studies do, whether it's for yourself with a pre-launch or for your students or clients with a pre-launch?
Oh, I think case studies, especially in 2024, like it's always been important for social proof. I say it all the time is people are more hesitant than ever. There's been such a flood of things on the market, things that have worked that haven't worked, that people need to see social proof. And with case studies is those stories, like it goes beyond like a testimonial, right? Because when you have a case study, you're able to tap into different segments of your market very naturally, right? Because I know I do case studies and it's a great way to, discuss objections that people might be having, myths that someone believes. Like I did a case study the round before the last where I had someone who talked about how she thought a pre-launch, she didn't need to do a pre-launch because anyone who was going to buy anyway was going to buy during the launch, right? That was like a belief that she had. So all of a sudden, instead of me trying to like change or shift a belief in my audience, someone else is doing it for me. And there's something very, very powerful in that. Right after my last launch, which was my biggest launch ever, I think I was in Nashville. And it's funny, I was walking with my friend, Tracy Matthews and Laura Belgray, my friends, I should say. And Tracy had asked me, why did I think the success of this last launch? What was the reason behind it? And Laura had talked about, like, she was like, oh, it was because Brenna had so much social proof. And it is because I intertwined case studies everywhere I could in different ways and formats, video, snippets, like I did it all. And so I've seen the tremendous, like people want to know, does this actually work? And because of all of the social proof, I'm able to show them right? All of a sudden it takes away that, people are worried about being salesy and icky. It's just like, no, like make a really great case in your strategy of why someone should buy from you and then back it up with your social proof. That's essentially what I show people at a very basic level.
And that is so true with just seeding in social proof every single place that you can think of. And tell me if I'm misquoting you, but I feel like you talk about having some kind of social proof in every email that we're pumping out during pre-launch and just making sure that it's there. And people are like so very aware that like, yes, I can trust this person. Yes, they have some authority. Yes, they get where I'm at.
Yeah. So I don't think you have to do it every single one, but I say that we're always looking for opportunity that we can interject the social proof into. And a lot of time when I look at emails, there's missed opportunity for social proof or for even just doing client stories. So I don't think it has to be every single time, but it's never going to hurt, especially when you can do it in a way that it doesn't feel contrived, right? Because I can tell a story about something and then go, oh yeah, and this actually happened to my client, Brittany, too. And when Brittany did this happened. So it doesn't have to feel forced.
Definitely. I couldn't agree with that more. And you're talking about, I love that the words that are coming up a lot are like intentionality, being strategic, things feeling natural, not feeling forced and salesy. I just said that this morning on a summit interview where I was talking about case studies for health and wellness providers, because that is a group I belonged to, still belong to. And that is a group of people where they're like so sensitive to not being salesy. We just want to help. That's what we say. That's what a lot of coaches will say. I just want to help people. And the best way to show your work is to show your work and use a case study to show your work, because then as a reader, I'm able to connect with you, the guide. I'm also able to see myself in the shoes of your student or your client. And it's just a very natural fit for me to watch myself going through your program or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
I love this. Okay, you have your PACE method, which I want to talk about if you're open to sharing what your PACE method is. Okay, tell us about it.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because I almost talked about it when you brought up social proof, because the C in PACE is credibility. So PACE is personality, authority, credibility, and empathy. I worked with my friend Linda Sadu a while back on personality quizzes, and I learned DISC from her. But basically in DISC, there's 4 different personality types. There's dominant, which is the D. I is influencer. S is the steady. And then the C is conscientious. So the D is, I said that, dominant, influencer. The steady one is the emotional person. I'm the steady, right? Like give me lots of emotion. I want to hear your long stories, like that sort of thing. The C is conscientious. This is the person who wants to know the facts. They want to know like A through Z, what you're offering. So when I think about PACE, I thought about these different personality types. And so the P in PACE, which is personality, which is influencer. How can we show in our content pieces of our personality, things that are going on in our life? You know, I always talk about how I read cheesy romance books, and my dear pug passed away this last summer, but he was a big part of like what I talked about in my content. And so we want to show people pieces of our personality. And so when I talk about in content is that we want to intertwine PACE. So the first thing is the P, which is our personality. The A is our authority. Like, why are you the expert, right? And so authority content can come out in all different types of ways, but it could be the way you talk about your values. Like I talk a lot about how autonomy is very important to me, and that giving people autonomy in their buying decision is super important. And that's why I love pre-launch, because you give people a lot of autonomy. You don't make them feel pressured. So autonomy, which is the A part, which is also, if I'm thinking through authority, that dominant people want to see someone who knows their stuff, right? Who they can make quick decisions. So that's the A in PACE. C is credibility. And that is what we've talked about, which is social proof, case studies. How can we actually demonstrate to our people that we are credible, that they should trust us? And then E is empathy. And E, that's where the steady comes in. And I feel like empathy is a word that's been way overused, and I'm nervous because it's so important, but I feel like it's becoming the word like authentic, right? Like everyone throws around empathy. But really to me, empathy is like, how can we get into the heads of our ideal clients? And this is another reason why market research is so important. Like, how can we show them that we understand where they're at? And that to me is the basis of empathy. So even though I feel like that word's been overplayed a lot in online business, it's like the knowing of people. I always say like there's nothing more empathetic in our content that we can do is than to know our customers so well that they feel like we're speaking directly to them. And that is too, once again, it goes back to the looking at the disc. That is that steady person. Like I want the feelings, like I want you to feel the way I feel. And so when we can demonstrate these things, so once again, personality, authority, credibility, and empathy, when we can start intertwining these aspects into our content, our people will naturally lean in.
Okay, you get it. You know SEO is important, but no, you're not interested in learning another skill. Who has the time? But who are you supposed to trust with the task of getting SEO to work for you? Someone who won't ghost you mid-project or treat you like a dum-dum lollipop. Someone who actually wants to empower you and your team with all things SEO. Hi, yes, it's me, Brittany, and you are the person I created the SEO packet for. You're curious, you want to understand this thing better, but like only a little bit. You don't actually want to do the doing. This way, you get the key SEO stuff super fast, and you get support throughout and beyond the project. No more letting Google gift you the wrong SEO strategy. Time to put the right words in the right places and get found online by the right people. Find all the info you need below. Yeah, and that's a really good point because you are hitting on the different personality types and you're giving them each what they really need and what they're looking for. I love that. And I feel like case studies are built for the PACE method. I feel like emails can totally be built for the PACE method and even social posts. Like knowing that those four things really need to show up. Now that you know them, it's like, oh, okay, let me just put this out on a checklist and make sure that every time I'm talking about my offer, my program, whatever it is, that I've got that there.
Well, and if you think about it, even in this discussion that we're having as a podcast, like we've done PACE, right? We've talked about things about our personality. There's certain things that we've said that are both strong statements, credibility. I could have intertwined, I'll do it now, where like people that have used pre-launch, I've seen triple their enrollment in their programs, right? Like empathy, that I'm really leaning into how people are feeling. Like you probably do a lot of this even naturally, but you don't realize it. So once again, it goes back to that intention. The more you're aware, then you can be like, oh, okay, I did talk about this, but I forgot to mention this like social proof of what I have. Or wait, is there a moment where I can really lean into how this person is feeling at this time so that they can feel like I understand them? And so when you start filtering, so I used to be a social media manager and I talk about all the time, like people talk about buckets of like, one day you have to entertain, one day you have to inspire, one day you have to educate. Like, I don't subscribe to that. Like I say, like, let's just get out what people need to hear and then start thinking about how we can kind of adapt using PACE.
Yeah, that's so wise. I really like that. I've never really resonated with the content buckets for whatever reason. That just never worked for me. So hearing this is something that to me is much more applicable. And like you said, I'm probably doing it and maybe not even realizing it, or I'm hitting 3 out of the 4. And then it's as simple as, oh, I noticed I don't have this piece in here. Let me just go back and like add that in a sentence or two.
Exactly.
I think that's really smart. I've always wanted to ask you this. What is your favorite part of, and I'll give you 2 options, the pre-launch plan program or just pre-launches in general?
I think what you learn in the pre-launch plan program, and it's what I like about pre-launches, is that you just learn to speak in a different way in your content that feels doable and doesn't feel like, a lot of times launches are associated with stress and pressure and cart open and cart close, where I love like, okay, how can I put out really amazing content that gets people leaning in? The email that I'm writing for tomorrow is talking about how way back in the day, I had to cold call. I worked for Bank of America. And I used to have to cold call people in the evenings to try and get them to take out home equity loans. And like, I never wanted to sell anything ever again, right? I was like 21 calling people, trying to get them to take out huge loans against their houses. And it's not that I have a problem with home equity loans. I think there's a wonderful purpose, but there's something very different than a customer walking in and saying, hey, I want to put a pool in my backyard this summer. Can you help me get a loan? And I say, yeah, let's look at our options. You want an equity loan or an equity line? Versus me calling someone while they're eating dinner. And that's to me the difference between a pre-launch and how launches have been set up. Like launches were, oh my gosh, here's this thing, I'm waving my hands. Where a pre-launch is, I'm inviting people into my orbit and getting them to opt in and say, hey, I want to hear more about this.
I love that. That visual is definitely going to stick with me to go back to storytelling. I mean, when you do include storytelling and you really make that a part of your marketing and your messaging, it gets those visuals to stick in people's heads. So, okay, well, let's just leave that there because that was perfect. Where can people find you? You mentioned Behind the Launch, you mentioned pre-launch plan program. Like, where can people find you and learn more about all this stuff?
Yes. So, BrennaMcGowan.co. And there you can find information. Behind the Launch won't be happening again until August, so there won't be information about that just yet. But that's where you can get onto my email list. I have a pre-launch cheat sheet where you can go ahead and figure out this type of content that we've been talking about. Like, what type of content do my people need to see before I launch? So you can grab the cheat sheet that gives you different ideas. There's also, if you're interested, the pre-launch plan program, officially opening our doors in March. And if you're listening to me and like, yes, I need this system, like I need a way to talk about my stuff and I want to do it in a way that doesn't feel a ton of pressure, a lot of sales. And it's really, someone said that it's working like smarter and not harder. And that's really what I want, right? Like, how can we create this like smarter, less hectic launch time? So if that's something that you're interested in, I would love to talk to you about that as well.
Yeah, it really is. And it, like you said earlier, it really feels so doable. And this is my first launch that I'm actually going to be rolling into pretty soon, where I have had the pre-launch actually ready to go, all set up. I followed the plan. I'm so excited. So stay tuned. I'll share more on that, but I'll make sure I've got the links behind the launch, just a plug for that as well. I'm so excited for that. Every time you do this is like one of my favorite summits to listen to because you get to hear from some really big name people who have done launches and you learn lessons from them and you get to think through different angles of things that you could include in your launch that you maybe never thought of. I just love those conversations. So never feared. That link down below is going to be accurate at all times because every time Brenna launches the Behind the Launch, I'm always like, let me make sure that's the accurate link.
Yes, yes. So you can look at the link. It won't have a place to sign up. And so for everyone who's listening too, Behind the Launch is a conversation series. So I ask guest experts one question, which is what worked well during your last launch. Everything we do, these are quick conversations I've had with them on Voxer. And so I just like package up those conversations and you get to eavesdrop on the conversations that I have with all of these amazing people who are doing big things. And then too, you could also come find me in the Behind the Launch Facebook group because we have past interviews. Yeah. Every time I do a Behind the Launch, I always interview guest experts that want to come in and I say, okay, what's something that didn't work so well? And it's amazing the things that people have done that haven't worked well, we learn just as much from. And all of those conversations are still in the Facebook group.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. We'll make sure that that is linked below. And anyone who's ever connected with me on Voxer, you can thank Brenna because she's the reason that I'm on Voxer and that I now use it for everything. I haven't even really done sales calls on Zoom since I've been on Voxer. I just have conversations with people and it's going back to that natural word. It just feels so much easier and so much less pressure and people can just ask questions and then it's like, okay, cool, I'm in.
Yeah, well, even as a person who does sales calls, it's like, I can actually like take a moment and think, not feel like this, like, oh, I got to have all the answers, right? Yeah, no, Voxer is an amazing tool.
Such an amazing tool. So thank you for Voxer. Thank you for PPP. Thank you for being here. And I really appreciate this conversation because this is something that I wanted to share with the world about. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. I will catch you next time. That was really something, wasn't it? Let that really sink in and guide you toward being the answer to even more Googled questions. Thanks so much for joining me this episode. You are the reason this show exists and that it keeps growing. You know, thanks to all those follows and reviews. If you know someone who could benefit from what was shared, send it to them. We don't do shy around here. If you thought of clarifying or follow-up questions while listening, you know what to do. Say hi on Instagram. Check the show notes for all the things that were mentioned, and I'll talk to you soon, friend.